In this season of Advent, we are dwelling in a different word each Sunday and each Wednesday. Last Sunday, our word was peace, and we heard from the second chapter of Isaiah that swords will be beat into plowshares, which means we are apprentices of Jesus as peacemakers. Wednesday night, our word was near, and we, instead of talking about being near to God, tried to be near to God. So we lit like 80-some candles up here, shut out the lights, and just kind of sang what came to our hearts as we sat in this space. Today's word is nativity, and I did look it up in the dictionary because it's not like a word we use all the time. And it is the idea of the occurrence of a birth. Some people don't know their nativity stories, right? You're adopted and didn't get all of that. Some of us know more than others. Recently, I learned a little bit more about my story, or some layers to it. I knew that my dad was watching a hockey game, and there was a hockey player named Derek Sanderson, and that's where they got the idea for my name. Recently, I was preaching at Castle Church, which has changed their name to The Hearth. So I was at the Falcon Bar on a Wednesday night, and at The Hearth, there's another guy named Derek that's about my age. And he came up, and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Are you a Derek and the Dominoes Derek, or a Derek Sanderson Derek?" I didn't know that was a thing. But apparently, there were different parents in the 1970s, some of whom were music fans and some of whom were hockey fans. So I was at Publix yesterday getting a sandwich thing, and the guy's name was Derek, and I said, "Derek Sanderson or Derek and the Dominoes?" He was like, "What?" So I don't know. But I'm getting, right, all of this is part of my nativity story. So the other discovery that I made this week about nativity stories, I'm going to outline for you today, and you're going to have to tell me if it holds water. I think it does, although I'm sure they would deny it. But how many of you seen the movie Monsters Incorporated? I think that is not just a nativity story, but I think they're actually telling the story of Isaiah 11. So I'm going to connect all those dots, and then we'll come back and I'll ask you if it holds, right? So Isaiah 11 starts off and says there's a shoot that will grow out of the stump of Jesse. So the stump of Jesse, Jesse was whose father? King David. So when David is the king, God promises that David's family will reign forever unless they mess it up. They mess it up. So when you talk about the stump of Jesse, we're saying the monarchy that was promised to David has been cut down. But God's promises are stronger than our inability to keep our end of the bargain. So the prophet says that a shoot is going to come out of that stump. And that shoot is going to have the Spirit of the Lord. A spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and might, a spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. We speak those words at baptism, at confirmation. Now, if you think about that, if a person has that, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and might, a spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord, that sounds like somebody who really is wise and knows a lot of stuff, right? So if we pause there for a moment and jump into the movie, Monsters Incorporated starts off with a lot of things that they, in their monster world, have wisdom and understanding about. You go visit a factory because they have used science, monster science, to figure out that fear is powerful. If you can scare little kids, you can capture in their screams to power your city. And so they have used all of their wisdom and understanding and counsel and might to build a whole economy around this, right? And they've not just built the structures and the portal to children's bedrooms, but they have figured out who's got the right gifts. Because you can't just have somebody that's not scary go in. It's more efficient if you have somebody that's really scary. And you can train them to be scarier. And if you're not good at that, you might be good at paperwork, or you might be good at capturing the energy as it comes out. So if you just think about that monster world for a minute, they have all sorts of wisdom and understanding that they have used to build a world that works for them. But it's driven by fear, and it's driven by the terror of little kids. So if you think about our present time, we have wisdom, we have understanding, we have reason, and all of those are good things, right? God has given us brains to think and conversation to share wisdom and discern. And yet, we also have learned, pretty much what they learned, the monsters, that fear is a powerful thing. I don't watch the news much because mostly I think it's trying to scare me. If you pay attention to politicians, most of the messages you see are, don't vote for them, they're scary, right? Tell them what to be afraid of if they become the person that's in office. If you pay attention to a lot of advertising, even the positive stuff is really underlined trying to tell you what's missing or what you should be afraid of so that you can, right, do something to change that. So we too have learned that wisdom and understanding all that we have, that fear is powerful. And then you can drive a lot of things with fear. You can drive whole corporations and government structures with it. Now, the other thing that they have in the monster world is that they have come to know that children are dangerous, right? So when the one gets loose, Mike and Sully are running all over trying to contain the child before hazmat people have to come in and clean up the mess and they get in trouble. So in the movie, you got the monsters are scary to the kids, but the kids are scary to the monsters. So when you think about our own present time, right, yes, we have all the fear and other things, but we also have made certain people or groups of people the ones that we should be afraid of. I don't know who you're afraid of. I know who we get told to be afraid of. Sometimes it's certain people from certain places, certain religions, certain colors of their skin or ethnicities or languages. And if we can just get afraid enough of other people, then we don't have to think of them as people. We can think of them as monsters, right? And then we can live in this space where fear drives us in new and different ways. And all of this, we can justify with logic and reason sometimes. We can do studies and come up with evidence and say why this neighborhood's dangerous and that one's not, and all the rest of it. But Isaiah, this one that has the wisdom of understanding and counsel and might and knowledge and fear of the Lord, with all of that wisdom, the prophet says, but he is not going to judge with what his eyes see and what his ears hear. He's going to have all the wisdom in the world, but isn't going to use any of those normal things we think of as our senses of what we see in the world to come in and operate. Instead, the prophet tells us, this one is going to judge with righteousness the poor. So rather than using all of the evidence at hand, all of the science and reason and understanding we have, this one is going to have new eyes that see different through the righteousness of God and is going to make a different way of being because of that. This is where I think this story from Isaiah is a nativity story. It's not the sheep and the shepherds and Mary and Joseph all around that manger scene we think of, but it is this new birth. It's this new start. It's this new way of seeing and being that we point to Jesus because Joseph was in the line of David, right? It's the fulfillment of the promise. In that monster world, they come to see a new way of being because a little kid laughs. And they find out that laughter is more powerful than fear. And it changes absolutely everything. Does it mean that fear didn't work? No, it worked just fine, right? They used it to power their world. Nothing changed about all that science. It just turns out there was a better way. And so that better way changes, right? The kids no longer have to be terrified. The monsters get to be better versions of themselves. They actually start doing different jobs that they enjoy more because they're living into a different way of being. Now, I think Isaiah also tells us that we've been building nativity scenes wrong. We've got one over here, we've got one out there, we've got one back there, and they all look pretty much the same. Do any of them have a lion? No. A leopard? A wolf? No. If we keep reading in Isaiah, the prophet says, look, this one's going to come into the world, it's going to judge different, isn't going to use all the wisdom, has it all, but it's going to use God's righteousness instead. And then says, this is the vision of the nativity, that the wolf will lie down with the kid, the leopard with the lamb, the lion with the calf. This is the predator at peace with the children of the prey. And then there's snakes and little kids and other things too. Predator at peace with the children of the prey. What happens in Monsters Incorporated? The monstrous predators end up at peace with the children, right? Now, this is what really sealed the deal for me. if you keep reading Isaiah, after God gives us the vision of what's happening, it says, and a little child shall lead them. Who leads them to the new place in the movie? A little child, right? So I'm pretty sure Monsters Incorporated comes straight out of Isaiah 11. What do you think? All right, we're going to say yes. Now, so what does that mean for us, right? So we've got this vision from Isaiah that our nativity scenes might be missing some pieces. And we've got this movie that helps us understand that nativity might be about new beginnings, which is what happens in the movie. And so then we can come around to those same places, right? We've got all the reason and understanding in the world that tells us that the world works the way it does. That war is necessary, that poverty is inevitable, that we should be very afraid of certain kinds of people and build walls and gates and everything to hide behind to keep us safe from them. But Christmas is the story of a little child that comes into the world and ultimately leads us to a new place. It's a new place that has to go through death. It's a new place that has to deal with fear and all the rest of that. But it comes to that resurrection life in which we are already planted and grounded. So a living live nativity all on its own is a little bit much for me. But if you add in the things that God says will be there, a lion, a leopard, a wolf, are you getting anywhere near that? Our zoo people might, yeah. But the point being, right, God has a different vision. Now, if we just imagine it as animals, it's one thing. But what if we are the living nativity? What if we are the ones that are supposed to be the new beginning because we've already been given that gift of life? Here's what might happen. People that think Republicans are monsters and people that think Democrats are monsters and people who think they're both monsters all might sit down and have a meal together and have a deep and meaningful conversation about something. Is that going to be easy? No. It's going to be scary like there's a lion and a leopard and a wolf? Right. Could it be a new beginning? Yeah. Some of you have family situations that need a new beginning. And what might be the thing is sitting down together. There's all kinds of places in our world that need reconciliation. They need a new start. They need a new nativity story. And God is inviting us to imagine that that can happen now because of the work that Jesus has already done for us. We have a nativity at my house, and I was going to bring it today, but it was 3 boxes down, and that was too much. Some of you have seen it. It's one of those little people ones, right? And they got the characters. You can pop the angel on top. Well, when we got it, my kids were little, and we happened to have some shampoo back then. That was Mike and Sully from Monsters Incorporated that popped onto the top of the shampoo bottle, and it turns out that fits perfect on top of that little manger scene. And for the longest time, I thought, well, that's cute, but it really does tell the story of Isaiah 11 today. And I think what we're meant to take away from this is that laughter is more powerful than fear, that hope and grace and love are more powerful than any of the horrible stuff the world throws at us, and that we are the agents of all of that, meant to be a living nativity in the world so other people can come to know this too. Amen.